Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. As you know on this channel, I like to sort of jump around and try different things and do different projects and stuff like that. That's one of the most fun things about doing a channel like this, because if I just showed you what I did making knives day after day, that would be rather boring and I don't think anybody would watch that. I actually bought 24 feet of 4140 steel, 3/4 round, and that's a lot. It's a lot more than I need. And 4140 is not really the best material for punches and things like that. It does work a lot better than like mild steel, for example. There's better steels though. The reason I'm using this is because it's readily available and I'm still learning how to make good punches and good things, you know, tooling. So the profiles and the designs of these tools is very important as I'm learning, and as you probably know, especially if you've used any. So I've got plenty of the stock and I can definitely make what I need, and I shouldn't have to buy any more of that for a long time. So let me show you a couple of punches here. This is the one that I made on the channel a while back. It's sort of a hammer eye punch, and it works, but I used this punch to build this hammer, and I did it by hand using largely my 8-pound sledge, and it took a long time. I realized that this profile on this punch is too thick. It doesn't have the kind of profile that it needs. And so that was a learning experience. And that's part of the reason that I did it by hand, is so I could really understand how these tools are working, because, like I say, blacksmithing as opposed to bladesmithing is not something I spent as much time on. The other day I made this punch, and I actually used it in the making of our 2000 ball bearing tomahawk, and this one worked far, far better. And granted, it's a little narrower thickness wise, so you might use it for a little narrower eye, but it would still work for starting the hole in a hammer as well. And look at the profile difference on these. So massive difference, and that should be obvious. So if I was using this particular punch on the press or something like that, the issue would be largely mitigated. In other words, it wouldn't really matter, because if you have 24 tons of pressure, then you can get away with different kind of profiles. So that's something to think about too, although I would not use this particular one on the press. Nonetheless, having a tool that works efficiently is preferable, I think. And so somewhere between this profile and this one is something I want to build for the press, and then I also want to build a longer punch like this to use by hand, and I'm going to show you how I made this one and how I'm going to make these other two. Alright, I have two pieces of steel. One is 10 inches long and the other one's about 4 inches long. So this is going to be the hand punch, and you can make it a little bit longer as long as you want, I guess, within reason. Why am I going to make a hand punch? Well, because to make a punch like the one I showed you with the handle, you have to have a punch. Now, if you have a welder or something, you don't have to do that. You can weld on a piece of strap steel, which is actually what I'm going to do with this one. But having that tool progression where you have to have tools to make tools, but you have to start somewhere as well. And so a simple hand punch like this is sort of the first step to getting to that, building a hammer or whatever it is you're trying to make. Alright, so the idea here is to make this as easy and simple as possible to make these punches so that you can use them. And you saw what I did there. I ground sort of a cone down to about 3/8 round at the end. And the next thing we're going to do is simply squash those flat, not completely, but about 1/3 of the way. And I'm going to do the small one with a hammer, and I'll do the big one with the press. And then after that we can clean them up on the grinder, and they should be ready to use. Alright, so I cut a piece of steel. This is 4140 as well. I want to try to make a hammer out of it. This should yield about a 4.5 pound hammer. Now this is a little bit too small around for what we want to do. I have to squish this down shorter and hopefully wider. So we'll see how this works, but if I can accomplish that, then the ability to use a smaller stock diameter is going to be advantageous. So let's throw this in there and let it heat up while we finish working on our punches. Alright, at this point our punches are plenty cool enough to go cool off in water the rest of the way. I don't want to quench them. I'm just going to leave them air cooled, which is a perlitic state, and that'll be harder than it was when it came off of the bar, but not hard enough to crack or chip when we use it. So we already have the basic shape of our punch here, and the thing I'm going to dress up now is the end here, so it's more of a wedge shaped, put more of an edge on that. Alright, these are pretty quick, pretty simple, and I'll show you what I got going on here. So this one is tapered a little bit lengthwise. You see I kind of ground this back. I could have or maybe should have forged that, but what that's going to do is the metal that it's working on is going to be worked on from here to about here. Endwise, you want to make sure that there's, you know, your profile here is even side to side. I had to address that a little bit because it wasn't completely even, and this edge to be centered. It's not really an edge. There's you know, it's dull. So the punch works. You know, we can continue by hand. You can see that I started on the anvil, kind of got things lined up, and then I moved to the lower striking surface to get more power out of the hammer strikes. But anyway, you can continue on and punch that by hand. But what I'm really interested in finding out is how well the short punch works with the press, because that's what I want to be able to do. Alright, well, we're making progress. I got a hole punched in the hammer and got it straightened out pretty good coming from the other side, so that's good. I've been modifying this as I go a little bit. It's closer to the one I showed you originally, and my idea about having it wider up here so that this has got relief back here, bad idea. Not working so great because the steel kind of closes up around it and it makes it hard to get. So a taper is better anyway, so I'm just working with that, and I finished punching it by hand again because I need to make a block with a hole in it to punch through on the press. And the press punch is the design's not so great on that. It needs to be stouter, more tapered. Anyway, so I'm learning how to do that, but it's all a process. And I'm going to start drifting the eye on the hammer here, and we'll get that done here. So It's going a lot easier than the first hammer I made, so that's good. Alright guys, we got a hammer forged. It's looking pretty good. Obviously it still needs some work. We'll come back later and heat treat it and normalize it a couple times, harden it, temper it, do some grinding on it, and then put a handle on it. So anyway, this is the second hammer that I've ever forged, and the process is getting a little bit better. I'm still learning, and the punch thing, it's a process. So I hope to be to where I can make these at a somewhat efficient rate before too long, but I'm learning and the process is getting a little easier. So appreciate you guys coming along on this day in the shop. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.